I should have known something was off when her mom called a family dinner 2 months into our engagement. Not a celebration. Not a meet the grandparents type of dinner. A formal, sit down, no jokes, bring your documents kind of dinner. And that's exactly what it turned into. Her name was Elena. And for most of the relationship I thought I'd hit the jackpot. She was warm, charming in that easy way that made everyone like her. I'd met her in college, she was in pre-law, I was working my ass off juggling 2 part-time jobs and still somehow trying to pass engineering. She made life feel lighter. I didn't have much, but when I was with her, it felt like maybe I could actually build something that lasted. Her family? Wealthy. Well-known. Picture perfect from the outside. But a little intense. They were the kind of people who said, "We're very close," and meant codependent. They vacationed together, scheduled their days around group texts, and had family decisions meetings over brunch. But I didn't think too much of it, until the night they slid a manila envelope across the table and smiled like this was just another step toward happily ever after. It was a Thursday. One of those nights where something in the air just feels tight. Elena and I had been engaged for about 8 weeks. We weren't rushing the wedding or anything. Honestly, I was still adjusting to the idea that someone like her wanted to spend the rest of her life with someone like me. Her parents had invited us over for dinner, just the 4 of us. Elena didn't say much about it. She just said, "They want to talk about some future planning stuff. Nothing serious." So I showed up. Nice shirt. Clean shave. A bottle of wine I probably couldn't afford. We made it through dinner. Roasted chicken, polite conversation, her dad's usual back in my day story. Then dessert came out, along with the envelope. Her mom slid it across the table to me, perfectly manicured fingers tapping the edge. Just some simple paperwork. We give it to everyone joining the family. I laughed. I thought it was a joke. Some weird family tradition or prenup kind of thing. But they didn't laugh. I opened it. The title on the first page read, "Long-Term Familial Care Integration Agreement." Okay, that was already suspicious. I kept reading. Line after line outlining what would happen if Elena's younger brother, Mark, 19, born with severe autism, was ever left without their parents. And the kicker? It named me as the secondary successor caregiver once their parents passed. Which meant if Elena couldn't do it, it would all fall on me. Not help. Not support. Legal. Guardian. And they expected me to sign it. At dessert. I'll pause here, because the moment I looked up from that contract and saw them all watching me like it was the most normal thing in the world, I felt something in my gut shift. This wasn't just about love. This was about control. And I wasn't sure if Elena knew it, or was in on it. I stared at the contract, my eyes scanning the words again and again, trying to convince myself I was reading it wrong. But I wasn't. It spelled everything out in clinical, lawyer-approved detail. Upon the death or incapacitation of Elena's parents, I would become the legal guardian of her disabled brother, responsible for his care, his housing, his finances, his entire life. Not we. Me. As I set the papers down, trying to keep my face from showing what I felt, I looked at her. She was smiling. Not out of malice, not smug, but like this was totally normal. Like she was expecting me to give her hand a little squeeze, nod, and say, "Of course, I'll sign anything. I love you." But I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I asked the only question I could form. "What is this?" Her parents glanced at each other. Her dad spoke first. "We believe in clarity. It's important that we all know where responsibilities fall when the time comes." Her mom nodded like we were finalizing a dinner reservation. "Mark will always need care. We just want to make sure his future is secure. This way there's no confusion." No confusion. Because they had already decided. I looked at Elena again. "Did you know about this?" She hesitated. Just for a second. But that second told me everything. "I knew they'd bring it up eventually," she said softly. "It's just a formality. They have legal stuff for everything." I blinked. "Elena, this isn't a waiver for a bounce house. This is a contract saying I'd take over your brother's life." She put a hand on my arm like I was overreacting. "You know I'll be there too. It's not all on you." "Then why is my name on the signature line?" "Alone." She didn't answer that. Instead, her mom chimed in again. "It's just a starting point. Of course we'd be open to edits if needed. We just assumed, since you love Elena, you'd want to be part of the plan." There it was again. Assumed. Assumed I'd say yes. Assumed my love meant ownership. Obligation. Submission. I didn't blow up right there. I didn't yell. Didn't storm out. I think part of me wanted to test them. To see if this was negotiable. If anyone in the room would stop and say, "You know what? We didn't handle this right. But they didn't. Instead, her dad handed me a pen. No pressure tonight. But the sooner we get this handled, the sooner we can move forward with the wedding. All right. The wedding. Because if I didn't sign, I wasn't just rejecting the contract. I was rejecting the entire future they'd already built in their heads. On the way home, the silence was suffocating. I didn't say anything for the first 10 minutes. Neither did she. Then finally, "You should have told me." She didn't look at me. I didn't think it would be a big deal. I almost laughed. Not a big deal? Elena, this is literally a lifetime decision. And your parents just dropped it on me like it was part of dessert. She crossed her arms, shrinking against the passenger door. I'm sorry. I didn't know how to bring it up. I didn't think you'd react like this. Like what? Like someone who just found out his future's been planned without him. She stayed quiet. That was the moment I realized she wasn't surprised by their timing. She was surprised I didn't go along with it. When we got to her apartment, she turned to me before getting out. Just think about it, okay? This doesn't have to change anything. But it already had. Because now I knew. I wasn't being married into a family. I was being absorbed, recruited. And somewhere deep down, I think she knew that's what was happening. She just hoped love would override reason. But for me, it didn't. And the next day, when her father called to check in on the paperwork, I told him something I don't think anyone in that family expected. I'm not signing. Not now. Not ever. His reply? Then maybe you're not the kind of man we thought you were. He was right. I wasn't. I was something else entirely. Free. After I told Elena's father I wouldn't sign the contract, I expected anger. Silence. Maybe a guilt trip. What I didn't expect was a counteroffer. 2 days after that call, I got an email from him. No greeting. No emotion. Just a PDF attachment labeled Revised Agreement, Proposal B. I didn't even want to open it, but curiosity and a little bit of paranoia won out. This version was shorter, cleaner, legally neutered. But the core was the same. Still responsible. Still legally bound to a role I never signed up for. Just dressed up with softer language and a few vague promises of support. And at the bottom, a note. We understand your hesitation. Please don't let one document stand in the way of a lifetime of family and opportunity. Opportunity. As if marrying into their family came with stock options. That night, I sat Elena down and showed her the new version. I asked her one question. Do you think it's okay to ask your partner to sign something like this? She looked at the screen for a long time before answering. It's not ideal. But I think it's necessary. Mark deserves to be safe. And I'm not going to abandon him. Neither am I. But you're asking me to promise to take care of him, alone, if you can't. That's not love, Elena. That's insurance. She flinched. Not at the words but at what they implied. She started pacing. Her voice was trembling but her words were rehearsed. You always knew my family came with baggage. This isn't baggage. This is a bind. Why can't you just trust that we'll figure it out together? I stared at her, something in my chest hollowing out. Because your definition of together means I carry it if you can't. There was a long silence after that. She sat down on the edge of the couch, staring at her hands. And then she said something that really stuck. I thought you were the kind of person who wouldn't walk away from responsibility. That's when I saw it. The trap. They weren't just testing my love. They were testing my guilt. Seeing if they could leverage my morality against me. Because people like me, we don't walk away easily. We overthink. We internalize. We want to do the right thing. And they knew that. But they forgot something. Responsibility without consent isn't noble. It's manipulation. It was short, cold, calculated. We've decided to postpone the engagement until this can be resolved. We respect your decision, but we can't afford uncertainty where our family is concerned. They were cutting me out. Reframing my refusal to sign as instability. And somehow I didn't feel sad. I felt lighter. Because in that moment I realized something. I was never marrying Elena. I was marrying into obligation. Into contracts and fine print and smiling faces with expectations hidden underneath. I never replied to that final email. I didn't try to fight for her, because she wasn't being taken away. She was already gone the moment she let her parents put that contract on the table without warning. I left the ring in her mailbox. No note. No goodbye. Just silence. Because people who try to trap you with love don't deserve an explanation. They already decided who you were to them. And now I decided who I wasn't. I wasn't their plan B. I wasn't a signature. I wasn't theirs. It had been 8 months since I left the ring in her mailbox. No calls. No texts. No closure. Honestly, I didn't need one. For a while, I even convinced myself it was over. That I'd dodged it all, the contracts, the manipulation, the slow burn trap dressed up as love. But like most traps, it wasn't meant for just one person. And when I opened my inbox and saw a message with the subject line, "You don't know me, but I think we have something in common," I knew before even clicking it. They did it again. The email came from a woman named Claire. Straight to the point. "Hi. I'm reaching out because I think you dated Elena. I'm seeing her now. I was. Until last night." My heart dropped. She explained how she and Elena had reconnected through mutual friends, and how they'd been dating seriously for a few months. Then she wrote the line that made my hands actually shake. "They asked me to sign something." Claire said she was invited to a family dinner. Nothing too formal, just her, Elena, and the parents. Everything was fine until dessert. That's when her mom disappeared and came back with a binder. Yes, a binder, labeled Family Contingency Planning. Claire said they presented it like it was totally normal. "We're a family that believes in being prepared. It's just a responsible step before engagement." They smiled the whole time. Elena never broke character. Claire said she flipped through it and realized halfway through the contract. It was almost word for word identical to what I had been handed. Only this time they had updated it for her. Her name pre-filled. New medical clauses. Even an estimated monthly cost of Mark's care that she'd be expected to cover in emergencies. Claire said she didn't sign. But she also didn't walk away. Not yet. What really got me? Claire said that when she hesitated, Elena mentioned me. She said you freaked out. That you panicked. That you weren't emotionally mature enough for a real commitment. That hit different. Not because it hurt, but because I'd finally seen the pattern. This wasn't just a family trying to protect their disabled son. This was a family running a carefully rehearsed script. And every person who came close enough got cast in the same damn role. Signer. Guardian. Backup parent. Partner. Optional. Caretaker. Required. And then Claire told me something that stopped me cold. She said she kept flipping through the binder after everyone left the room. Hidden in the back, tucked behind some generic tax forms, was a document with my name still on it. Dated. Time-stamped. And used. They hadn't deleted me from the plan. They just filed me away. Claire attached a photo. And there it was. My full name, printed under Previous Candidate, Tier 1 Responsibility. Tier 1. Like I was part of some HR spreadsheet for lifelong commitment. I stared at the photo for a long time. There was something so eerily sterile about it. Like they had reduced real human beings, with their own lives, families, futures, to checklists, contingency plans, draft picks, and I had almost signed. Claire's email ended like this. "I walked away. Just like you did. And I'm sorry they did this to you. I really am. But I'm glad you warned me without even knowing you did. If it helps at all, you were never crazy. You just saw through it first." And then one last line. "I think you saved me from losing myself. You think walking away makes you weak. That backing out of love makes you heartless. That saying no means you gave up. But the truth? Sometimes walking away is the strongest, most loyal thing you can do. Not to them. To yourself." I never wanted to expose anyone. I never wanted to be the guy telling a horror story about a perfect-seeming family. But if this story stops just one person from signing something that chains them to someone else's expectations for life, then I'm good being the warning shot. The one who got away before it was too late.